Welcome to the Men's Lifeline Academy. We're bringing on stellar men who are scholars of trying to impact their lives, the lives of their family, their friends, and their community. And today, we have the founder of the Men of Greatness community. We have Ryan in the house today. Ryan, welcome to the podcast. This has been a long time coming.
It has, man. It has. It's great to be here. I'm excited to dive in.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us about Ryan.
Too much, man. I'll give you a high level version, kind of a little bit contextual to why I talk about what I do today. I grew up in a single parent household. My dad left when I was very young. So just kind of had to learn how to figure out what it meant to be a man and take care of my mom. And in many ways, that was good. I grew up fast, but at the same time, just the past wounds and hurts that I had from my dad leaving and that absence created a lot of really bad habits that would turn into some pretty detrimental decisions in my life. One of those being I was 5 years married, and just over 5 years married in 2006, and nearly cheated on my wife with another woman. By the grace of God, I did not. But I woke up that next morning after having that near miss and just said, what the hell are you doing? I was financially successful. We owned a home in a nice place in Orange County, California. We had the cars. We had all the stuff. I had a beautiful wife, a 4-year-old daughter, and I was just a hollow shell of a human being. And so I ended up going home that next day. And 3 days later, we ended up in church. And the pastor was preaching a message on what it meant to be a godly husband and a godly father. And I knew that was God's word slapping me in the face, saying, hey, it's time to turn this around. And so we began working on our marriage, investing into the church. It took about 4 to 5 years for us to get our marriage completely back on track. But now today I'll be married 25 years in March. I've got a 23-year-old daughter, a 16-year-old daughter. My wife and I are in an incredible spot. And now I get to coach other men, executive leaders, entrepreneurs, both helping them to build their businesses from a revenue generation perspective, but then also to help them strengthen their faith, strengthen their marriages, and really be the men that God has called them to.
Oh, that's a lot to unpack right there. And appreciate all your openness. It's not easy to be that open and kind of having a conversation about that. That was like growing in, a single parent household, your dad, and then going through all the struggles with your wife. So what was that healing kind of journey almost like between like either, recovering from without your father or, repairing the relationship with your wife? Because it's taking 4 or 5 years to repair it. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. I would say it happened in stages. It wasn't like I had intentionally laid it out. I didn't really even know what it meant to rebuild my marriage once we started trying. And what I would say is I think more than anything, it's interesting, as we're recording this, there's this article on Twitter that has gone wickedly viral. 160 million views about how to fix your life, how to improve your life. And there's these 7 points that are made. And I think that is what we're striving for. Like that's what we're yearning for, is this desire, like something in my life is broken. I want to fix it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, if our life is broken, we should want to fix it. But 2 things come to mind for me. One, and this is my own journey, is there's no clean framework or process to fix the most broken parts of our life. And that could be a relationship with God, a parent, our spouse. It could be a failed business. We want these kind of clean stages. Okay, what's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? I don't really think that exists. I think there's wisdom in following those things, but again, like I don't think it's as clean as we want it to be, even though we all grab onto those things. So that's one side. The other side is I didn't understand how badly I needed God and what that really even meant. I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church, so I had some familiarity with God and organized religion, but never really caught on. It went by the wayside as I went through high school. And so for me, that healing journey more than anything was about connecting with the God that I was starting to be introduced to, but didn't really know. I mean, so my dad and I, we would have a weekend relationship, every other weekend relationship while I was young. And then at 21, actually on my wedding night, would be the last time I spoke to my biological father for almost 10 years. We had a big falling out. Actually didn't even want him at my wedding. And anyway, so we stopped talking. Well, I was 22 years old, 22 when that happened, not 21. So 22 years old when that happened. Then at 28, I came to faith. And as I was crying out to God to be forgiven for all the ways I had mistreated my wife, that I had sinned against other people, here I was holding my dad at arm's length. And God was convicting me, and it really took 3 years. God was convicting me to forgive my dad and rebuild that relationship. So anyway, to answer your question, it's like, I wish I could say that there was one thing, but really it was, maybe the one thing was following Christ and gaining a good understanding for who he was calling me to be. But beyond that, it was really just being obedient in the day to day, to loving and serving my wife, to being more present for my kids, to forgiving and rebuilding my relationship with my dad. It was a long, long process.
So do you have a relationship with your father today? Like, is that?
Yeah. So we reconnected about 17 years ago. And now my dad is one of my best friends in the whole wide world. The only sad thing is he lives in a different state, so I don't get to see him as often as I would like. But yeah, man, I mean, as God would have it. So let's see. So I came to faith in 2006. I ended up planting a church and becoming a pastor of a church in 2012, and I did that to 2020. And during that time, and had reconnected with my dad, during that time, my dad came to faith and wanted to get baptized, and I got to baptize my dad. And so just these incredible full circle, only God type of moments that have just continued to help me just put my life back together and write a new story, or, maybe to finally just jump into the storyline that God had already crafted for me, and I was too ignorant to see or figure out.
That has to be that's an amazing story. I mean, how often do you hear about? I don't think I hear about that too much, about how father leaves the household but then rekindles the relationship.
Yeah, man. I think one of the things, that even as you just reflect that back, one of the things that I'm always reminded of is God is so much bigger than we are even capable of giving him credit for. And he does crazy things. I mean, we read these stories all throughout the Bible, and there's some wild ones, right? I mean, like this idea that we believe that God breathed the world into existence, right? Spoke the world into existence, or that at one point God would cause a giant fish, a whale, to swallow a dude because he was being disobedient. Like, that's crazy stuff. Those are crazy stories. And yet, if we look at our own lives, God does the craziest things. And the Bible says, like, with God, all things are possible. And I just don't think that we give God enough credit or put enough stock or weight into the possibilities that God has for our life. I think when we're building a business or something like that, I think that's when we're like, yeah, with all things God, with God, all things are possible. I can build $1 million business. I can build a $10 million business. And that's possible. But I just think that with all things, or with God, all things like repairing the marriage that is broken are possible. With God, all things like restoring a relationship with a distant parent or relative are possible. With God, that sickness that I've been living with my whole life, healing from that is possible. And so that's one thing for me that I've just learned over and over again. And I've tried to encourage other people as I've worked with them and just been friends with them and just trying to share with them is like, God is just so much bigger and does so much crazier things than we give him credit for. And if we would just give a fraction of our belief over to the possibilities, I think our lives would be wildly different and definitely better.
Well, especially as your living testament of like, being distant from your father, now him being your best friend, and now you're disappointed that he lives in another state where you can't see him as often.
Yeah. Yeah, man, God's been so good to me.
So what has it been like to now kind of take your story and now try to help other people? Because that's what we're always about, is like, how can we make an impact in other people's lives, especially with the story that you've been given and the cards you've been dealt, to now try to help others. As you explained, you have the Men of Greatness community that you developed. You've been doing a lot of mentorships, and you have your own kind of performance coaching business that you help a lot of entrepreneurs out. So what has that been like with your story?
Yeah. So, what I shared with you is a fraction of what my life has looked like. In addition to that, in 2013, we went through financial disaster. We lost our home to short sale and basically everything we owned. In 2017, my wife and I and 5 of our friends were in the crowd in Las Vegas when the mass shooting happened. And of the 58 people that were killed that night, one of those was one of our closest friends. And so, there's been so much hurt, so much heartache, so much tragedy, so many challenges and trials in my life. And as I was reflecting back on that, I ended up writing a book called Wounds: How Hurt, Heartache, and Tragedy Become the Keys to Unlocking Greatness. And as I was writing that book and reflecting back, I just kept going back to, in the book of Genesis, one of the most well-known stories is the story of Joseph. He gets sold into slavery by his brothers, basically to be killed. He goes on this long journey, ends up under the authority of the king at the time, the Pharaoh. And before long, he ends up, he's basically second in command. He's ruling everything. And his brothers, in the midst of the famine of Israel, need to go to the king to get an additional portion of food so they don't starve to death. They face Joseph. They're like, oh my gosh, he's going to kill us because now he's finally going to get his rightful revenge. And instead of killing them, Joseph says to them, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Basically meaning, you wanted me dead because you were jealous of me. And instead, God used me to put me in this place of authority. And on top of that, God is using me to bless you, the people that hurt me, at a time when I could destroy you. He said, again, evil for good. And so I took that idea and I was like, man, all of these things, all the bad things that I did, addiction and just, treating my wife inappropriately, like all these things that I did, all the things that, my dad did to me or other people did to hurt me, they were actually all for good. And that is crazy to say, because there's no way that me being addicted to drugs or being in strip clubs when I'm married is good. But God used that to shape me, to form me, to show me who he was and to show me who he wanted me to be. And so if that was the case for me, then that's the case for everybody and however God is writing their story. So I've taken that and I've just basically gone to any guy that will listen and say, look, my goal is not to make you like me. My goal is not to tell you that you need to follow the same path that I did, but I've got good news for you. As screwed up as your life is, or maybe as close as you are to the breakthrough that you want, that you dream about, I've got good news. There's a God out there, and he loves you more than anything in this whole wide world. And if you would put your faith into him, he is going to give you a life that you aren't even capable of dreaming of. He is going to heal you. He is going to give you purpose. He is going to repair those broken relationships and those wounds. He is going to turn all of that evil into good if you are willing to give him a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I try to do inside our community. When I coach one-to-one, I mean, there are guys that I coach that, Zach, they're making millions of dollars a year. And they're good guys. Like I'm working with a guy right now. He just broke his first $1 million earning year.
Wow.
And all the while that's happening, for 5 years, we've been working to build his business to get to that place. He started from zero, got to this place. He's incredibly happy with that. His marriage is falling apart. And so God has given me this unique opportunity to begin the journey with him in business, but be there to now support him and walk through what is actually the greatest challenge of his entire life, which is trying to figure out how to put his marriage back together to, so he can have his wife, so he can have his kids. And so it's like, all I do for him and every other one of these guys is the same thing, which is, what is God asking of you? And how can I help just continue to reflect that back to you? And so, yeah, I mean, it's crazy that I get to do this. I'm so grateful that I do. And I just pray that I get to do more of it.
Well, it's awesome that you have such, life in you to want to take on such a big, challenging task of, helping someone fully, whether it be financially, spiritually, or just with the relationship, especially since you can come from a place of understanding what it's like to struggle and everything. And, how receptive are the guys to your kind of ideas? I know you mentioned before that by a post that, kind of makes it almost sound too simple. If you do these some things, you can have a brand new life, which to anything, there's always going to be a step process to growing. It's trying to find out how do you do that where it's still recognizing the challenge of it at the same time. That it's not just I do these 7 steps and it's done. So how did you respond to that viral post?
Yeah, I think that, you first asked, like, how receptive are people to it? I think that there's a variety of ways. I think that for some people, it's they'll do anything but follow Christ because it's weird, or it is it's foreign to them, or it sounds too restrictive. It's like, I'll do anything to be successful. I'll do anything to be happy, but accept Christ. And so for them, it's like, then I can't help you. Just that's a roadblock. And it's not because it's my ultimatum. It's because I believe that if you do not know your creator, then you are not going to know who you truly are. And therefore you're never going to be able to fulfill the life that he's created you for. So that's that side. I think there's another side though, which again, like back to kind of this viral article. And I think it's in a lot of the world of self-help, which is people, we brag a lot about doing hard things. I think there's this like banner that we want to wave, which is like, I run with, 50 pounds on my back and I'll fast for 4 days and I'll like, we brag about the hard things, and yet we won't do the simplest things that are in front of us because they're just not sexy. they're just not easy. And so I just feel like the rejection more often than not is, that can't be it. Do something different. The Bible's old and archaic, so I'm not going to follow that. That's not the newest technology. That's not the newest way. Like, even like, I hate to like bash this guy because I don't know him, and clearly a lot of people responded well. But like, one of the things that article said was, I'm going to tell you 7 things that you've probably never heard before about like mindset, habits, whatever. And the absurdity of that, first of all, was I read the 7 things. They were really thought out, but they're the same 7 things I've heard a billion different times in the self-help world. On top of that, going again back to the Bible, Ecclesiastes, Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun, meaning it's the same things over and over and over again. But that's never good enough for us. We just want the next thing. We just want the next thing. So I just try to help guys keep coming back to this idea of like, let's just focus on the basics. Let's just focus on, as a husband, we would all agree, I don't care what background you come from, like, love your wife, do your best to protect her, provide as you can for her, not just financially, but with your presence, respect her, put aside your own preferences for hers as often as you possibly can. Don't treat her like an object. It's like very basic things. And then I get a guy that will come to me and say, man, my marriage is falling apart. I don't know what to do. I had this guy that did this recently. He's like, my wife left me because she's not happy with the way our relationship has been going. She had separated from him for 6 months. He goes, I will do anything I can to get her back. And I'm like, oh, so what have you been doing? And so he starts telling me. And then one of the things he says is, and he said, and she was really frustrated because I had a pornography addiction. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like that's a problem in your marriage. Right. And I said, so what are you doing about it? He says, well, he said, she told me that I needed to get rid of everything. Okay. And now mind you, it's been 6 months. And I said, oh, great. I said, what have you done? He says, little by little, I'm going through and deleting all the accounts that, that could be like that, right? Like just women, whatever. And I said, wait a minute. I said, little by little. I said, your wife got up, took your kids to another state, and your response to that was, I've done everything I can. So little by little, I'm going to delete. Like I would have taken my cell phone and thrown it into the wall and blown it up. Like it's common sense. If I really say I'm going to do anything I can to have the better marriage, to have a better life, are you doing that? And this guy couldn't even do the most simple of things. I know how hard it is to break an addiction, but at the same time, it's like, I don't actually think people want to change. I think people want to say they want to change, but few actually want to do the work. And then again, when it comes to do the work, it's like, I'm going to do the really big things. I'm going to do the craziest thing out there. I'm like, why not just do the simple things?
That's a good point because everyone's like kind of gets away from the basics and tries to go beyond the basics. But then you go to any personal development, go to any leadership conference, they say, go back to the basics. So I know there's one person that said, when you're hiring people, what's the list of that you want them to be? So they'll create their 10-page list of what they want in an employee. And then they'll say, how much of that are you doing? Kind of put it back on them. And they're like, so it's kind of like, why do we always have a tendency, like you said, it's because it's sexy and it's big, it's flashy to show that versus let's get back to the basics. Let's do step one. And I think for the biggest part that you mentioned is learning not to treat your wife or whomever like an object.
Yep. Well, like you just said, I mean, how, again, I primarily coach men 98% of the time. And, the guys will come to me and they'll say, hey, I'm frustrated in my marriage, or my wife's not doing X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, okay, let me help you with that. But at the same time, to your point, tell me about what you're not doing. Oh, well, it's just a few little things. But my wife, I'm like, wait a minute. Again, like when we talk about being a man, we're to be the leader. We're to step up. We're to do the bigger things. We're to take on more. And so how can you not focus on completely fixing yourself, completely growing, completely becoming a better person before you go to your wife and complain about the things she doesn't do? Like that was one of the biggest problems in my marriage. So when I got married in 2001, my wife was my best friend. We started off so well. And then little by little, just little things started eating at us. And what was so interesting, one of the things that we used to fight about a lot was money. And here's how just the irony of this whole thing was, My wife, I would get mad at my wife because we would go out to like a club or something on a Friday night. And so on Friday after work, she would go to the local Styles for Less and buy a $20 shirt. And I would get mad at her because I'm like, why do you need another shirt? $20. Every time we go out, $20. All the while, Zach, every week, I was blowing hundreds, if not thousands of dollars gambling.
Mm.
And it's like, now, the projection of my frustration for her spending money was because I was losing so much money. And so it was stress, and she was just the recipient of my frustration and anger. But the irony of the fact that I'm mad at her for spending $20 a week when I'm spending hundreds, if not thousands a week. And at least when she's spending $20 a week, she's getting something that she gets to put on herself. I am literally lighting money on fire, gambling. And so I just think, again, that's the irony, is it's easy to point the finger at somebody else and say, you need to change, you need to fix yourself. And even if they do, like, great, but we need to turn that thing right back around and say, how can I get better? How can I improve? How can I grow? How can I become more of who God is calling me to be in this business, in this marriage, in this relationship, whatever?
Good question.
Yeah, one day we'll answer it. I just don't think it's going to be this side of heaven.
Well, it's hard because, like you said, you have to eventually stop pointing the finger. I mean, that's the hardest part, is about taking that accountability and responsibility, is when you stop finger pointing and recognizing what you're doing. And what a lot of people say is, don't say the first thing that's on your mind, because it's all based in emotion. It's more so the second or third thought that's really getting at the heart of the issue of saying, listen, we can't afford that $20 because I just blew it.
Yeah. But to do that, like in my situation, that would then require me to admit that I was wrong, that I was failing, that I had to take responsibility. And at, 23, 24, 25, I didn't want that responsibility. I didn't want to admit. I'd gotten to a place in my life too quickly where I was successful and I was being looked up to. I was making more money than all of the friends that I was hanging around with on a regular basis. I had a title, I had the nice car, I had the house. I did not want that image to crack. I cared way too much about what people thought about me. And so there was no way that I was ever going to admit that I was coming up short, that I was the problem. And so it was just much easier to project that onto somebody else or something else. And again, to today, it's the very thing we do all the time. Look at, Adam and Eve in the garden. God goes to Adam and he's like, dude, what did you do? And he says, the woman did it. It's just the nature of the beast is for us to just put that blame anywhere else but ourselves. And I love, one of the things actually that I've really loved about, following you on social media, and a lot of the other guys that, seem to kind of have just now kind of formed this circle, is I'm seeing guys that are taking responsibility for their own actions. And I'm sure every single one of us would be quick to admit that we don't have it all figured out, that we're not nailing it in every area of our life, but we're taking responsibility and we're trying to do just a little bit better. And again, that's it. It's like, just do a little bit better. I don't need to radically transform every area of my life in 5 minutes. Like 2026 isn't the year that everything changes. It's just one more thing, one little thing to make me a little bit better will have an incredible compounding effect over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we always focus on impact over change, is because impact is getting slightly better a little as we go. Change is expecting that all of a sudden you're a new person, right? So with the person that you're coaching who has the porn addiction, is more so expecting someone to just completely get rid of everything.
Yep.
Now, in the 6-month period, could we talk about the progress and like what the person's doing? That's a different question. Especially when we look at where you're basically like at a lost end at that point, 6 months in and still working through. And I don't want to, I don't know that person's story or anything. It's just the concept of what can we do to really show that we're making those steps. The evidence to back it up that we're actually doing more than what we're saying. If we're not, if we're just giving it how we halfway in or fully in, kind of if we want to go to the Bible, that lukewarm. Are you cold? Are you hot? Or are you just like lukewarm? We don't know what you want to do.
Yep. Yeah. I really appreciate that because, again, it's on one side of things. When we see an area of our life that is bad, that needs to change, or that we just want to improve, there's definitely, I think there is an important emphasis on doing everything we can to make that change, right? So one side is like, there is this radical all or nothing mindset shift that needs to happen. So that I think is like, that's when Jesus says, like, if your hand is causing you to steal, cut it off. He's not literally telling you to cut off your hand. He's basically saying, like, you need to be prepared to do anything and everything necessary to stop yourself from committing this sin. So that's that side of like radical all in. I do believe that we need to have that mindset in order to get better. Then to the other side, it's like, but now when it comes to taking the steps forward, baby steps, incremental, millimeters, fractions of a percent. It's early in the year. I can't even tell you, the number of people that probably, set a goal to lose 20 pounds in 2026 and they've already failed. And but they failed because they wanted to lose 20 pounds in the first 2 weeks of 2026 versus saying, I'm willing to lose 20 pounds over the whole year, because losing, a pound and a half a month is much easier than losing a pound and a half an hour at the rate that they were trying to do it. And so they set themselves up for failure by trying to do too much all at once. So I think that same thing applies to us as guys.
Yeah. So what do you think it caused then guys to, where that lack of accountability comes from? I've always wanted, I know with Adam, being the first one to really say, it's not my fault, it's this person, it's Eve's fault. So where do you still see that trend of where guys kind of take that aha moment to just admit that they made a mistake even? It doesn't have to be like big or anything, like going back to the basics. Hey, I said I would be home at 6:00 and I'm home at 6:30. I didn't give you an update. Something as basic as that as a starting point. Because basically, if we look at it, it's like you didn't keep your commitment, you didn't notify. The wife's gonna be wondering where the heck you are.
Yeah. I think that I think it does go back to what you just said there. I think that I think it's important that we have a foundation to stand on. And if we don't, I think that needs to be reset first. I think a lot of times what's happened is we created this life on a rocky, weak foundation. And so I think it's like, man, who do I really want to be? The world tells me that I should be strong. The world tells me I should be successful. I should have a wife and 2 kids. I need a big house, all these things. It's like, yeah, all that stuff may be true, but what does that actually look like for me in my life? And even more importantly, what does God mean when he says that? And so I think that's the first thing, is going back to building on a strong foundation. And then secondarily to that, like, I think that we can do a better job. So I hear a lot of people say, well, if guys just get into a good group of people, they're going to get held accountable. That's true. The problem with that, though, is that requires the guy that's outside the circle to willingly jump into the circle. And we don't normally do that until we get to the end of ourselves. When life is blowing up, when we're really frustrated, then we jump in. So I think that one of the ways that we can see a shift, which again, I'm really excited about in social circles like the one we have, is I think that if we that are in the circle would start doing a better job of going outside the circle and grabbing onto people and bringing them in. being willing to go out there and be honest. I don't know why this keeps coming up, but I guess just because it's just so fresh. But like, again, back to this, X article that went massively viral. It's like, on one hand, I hate to be the guy that is saying that person got it wrong. Like, I don't know that guy. I don't know his heart. I don't know where he's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know his history. But what I do know is that I'm sure a large percentage of the 150 million people that read that article are Christian guys. And my fear is that all those Christian guys are going to read an article like that and get really excited about changing their life, not realizing that the only way we change our lives is by rooting ourselves in the wisdom of God. And again, I say this so carefully, but there was nothing in that article that led me to believe he was speaking from a place of wisdom from God. Now, it could be there, but that was not said. And so for me, I started sending, I wrote a response article to that. And I started DMing a few guys and I said, hey, would you mind reading this, giving me your honest feedback? And if you like it, then share it. Because I think, again, for the guys in the circle that are trying to do the right thing, that are trying to honor the Lord, that are trying to live out the life that he's called them to, I think we can do a better job to look outside the circle and say, hey, that's just not the way to live life. Hey, that's really good advice, but it's missing the core thing that we need more than anything. Hey, when you joke about your wife being your ball and chain, that ain't cool, and that ain't God honoring. Hey, when you're coming home after a long day and your way to blow off steam is to have another bourbon, that's probably not a good idea. Hey, when you've had a long day at work and all you want to do is go bury yourself in your cell phone and not play with your kids, that's probably not a really good idea, right? Like, I think that we can do a better job of reaching outside. I think we're scared to do that because then we look like we're being quote unquote judgmental or like we have it all together. And it's not. It's like, hey, me and Zach, we're just trying to figure this out too. We're no better than you are. We're just in a space where other people are helping to form us into the men that we know that God wants us to be. And that's what I think we need to be drawing more men into is, hey, like Jesus, it's like, just come and see. Just come on in here. The way you're going about it, it's going to end in a bad way. Jump in here and see if you'll find a life that you're really happy with.
I mean, that seems to really be the point of contention. It's just always like kind of leaving God out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, finding ways to, ask questions and everything to see if people even want to or willing to do whatever it truly takes. And again, that looks different for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, for 5 years before I became a Christian, 5 years, about 4 years before I became a Christian, one of my closest friends that lived 2 doors down from me, that we were spending almost every weekend together. He was a Christian. I was not at that time. He's watching me going out partying all the time, smoking weed almost every single day, saying stupid stuff about my wife. He was constantly telling me what an idiot I was, that I needed to turn my life around, that I needed to go to church with him. And I didn't want to hear it for 4 years. So it's not like he wasn't trying. And it's not on him for not trying hard enough. I just wasn't there. But when I finally nearly destroyed my marriage, I just happened to be in a place with another Christian guy, not this guy, another guy that was kind enough to kind of share some things with me. But then when it came time to go to church, I went back to my friend, my neighbor 2 doors down, and I'm like, dude, it's time. We're ready. And so he, though I didn't want to listen then, was helping to form and shape the decision that I would make later. And so I think, again, for us, it's like, man, we got to stop pulling punches. We are so quick to talk to people about improving their lives, going and taking more steps, eating better, building the business in a different way. It's like, will we be as bold to tell people that if you do not follow Christ, you will never have the life of your dreams? If you do not follow Christ, you will never have the marriage that you could have if Christ was at the center. If you do not follow Christ, you could gain the entire world and lose your soul.
Yeah, well, especially when, even if you are, a believer, but, like kind of like in your story, how you just rose to the riches a little bit too quickly for what you could handle and were prepared for it. Regardless if you're a believer at that point or not, I mean, a lot of people don't know what to do when they finally reach that level and of success and things like that, whether it be financial, following count, however you just define it. You always have to
Yeah.
find ways to prepare for it. I mean, you look at all the Hollywood people, how many times they struggle.
Uh, yeah. I
And
mean,
how many times they
which
just
it
had
goes.
natural talent that they want to have fun, and then all of a sudden compromise after compromise, and then kind of lose who you are, or we don't know what's written in those contracts. I remember, unless you watch a documentary like The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy, the person who played Dorothy, and how she felt guilty for just defying eating, whether it be a piece of cake or something that she wasn't supposed to have, since they wanted her at this body weight. So
Yeah. Which again, it goes back to, like having that strong foundation ourselves in being surrounded, in our case, being surrounded by other men that are similarly minded. We don't have to think exactly alike, but similarly minded, and have similar dreams and desires. And again, how that looks like success looks different to everybody. Joy and happiness looks different to some degree to everybody. But at the end of the day, I want to be in the circle of guys that want to do the best they can to make a positive impact in their business and earn a good living for their families and for themselves and for the good of other people. I want to be in a circle with guys that are respecting other women, that are seeking to marry one woman, to be with her forever, and to be an incredible husband to her, to be an incredible father to their kids, and to make a positive impact in the world around them. And the more that we're able to do that and surround ourselves with other guys like that, the more that it charges us up to keep going when that fight gets hard for us too.
well, especially when there's communities that are built for that. I mean, that's what you really need, especially since it's really hard sometimes to find people, meet people. That's why everyone has gone, in this case, online, because to find that group of people who take that accountability, responsibility, to and who knows who you are, so they know exactly how to call you out.
Yep.
Whether you have
Yep.
to use
Yeah.
just a direct approach or use not necessarily an indirect, but just like a softer approach.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And that has been the blessing of, social media and online communities, is it does give us the ability to connect with men in ways that we would not otherwise. What we try to do, particularly in our Men of Greatness community, is we just have stages and phases. So we start out with just kind of randomly knowing people on social media. And then as we grow, we invite them into community. And it's like, okay, now we're in a kind of a more private setting together where we can talk, we can, meet over video. And then we take it one step further into live environments where we do 1-day intensives and weekend retreats where we get guys together for a weekend and we can hug it out. We can sweat together in a workout. We can cook some meals together. And we can just dive deep into the challenges of this life and the joys of chasing incredible things together. So we really want to create that trajectory for as many people as possible because when it's just the online setting, particularly the social media, like that feels good. And it's always a good place to start, but it's never going to be enduring because there's still so much to hide behind and there's a lot of distance. And then again, when we go into like a private community, we can get a little bit more personal, a little bit deeper, but eventually really, I believe the magic happens when we can get to that in-person environment where we're able to engage with each other in a real life way.
Oh yeah, there would never be a replacement for in person.
Yeah.
There would never be a replacement for that human connection. Whether you hug it out, sweat it out, cook it out.
That's good. It's really good.
I mean, that shows that, people need people, and men need different communities and different ways to get together and find out, how we can live the best life possible, especially when you can see other guys actually live in accordance to those values, because a lot of times that doesn't get highlighted. So when you can actually physically see how people handle conflict, how people handle when there's a lot of stress going on, how they can handle how they, now when you knew that person wasn't treating their wife good, and now they're all of a sudden being very kind to her and very, compassionate. You can
Yep.
actually see
Yeah.
that. That's where that magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's cool too is, when you get together with somebody in person, even if it's just over one meal for one night, that in person connection creates, it's so much more deep and meaningful, and that is long lasting. There's a couple of, so I myself am in a men's mastermind. There's just four of us in this group. There's a long story behind that, but one guy lives in Alberta, Canada. One guy lives in Denver, Colorado. One guy lives in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And then I'm in Southern California. And so we meet individually with each other once a week over Zoom. Then we meet collectively as a group once a month for a few hours over Zoom. And then once a quarter, we meet up in person.
Oh,
And, so it's that in person, like, man, meeting up with those guys, 3, 4 times a year. They've become my best friends. They have become some of my closest confidants. I deeply, deeply love them. And it's because of that progression of connection that's got to that place where it's like, man, we got together in person. We really went deep and just built these relationships that will last for life.
it's awesome how you can actually meet people you've never met in your entire life.
Yeah, man, it's so cool.
And it's also good that you're also kind of in your own men's group too. That way you kind of can get filled yourself instead of always being the one to fill others too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was for a long time too ignorant to believe I needed help. Like I had it all figured out. I didn't need other people. Then I went through a season of life. So from 2012 to 2020, I was pastoring a church bivocationally, and also I had my business. I've been in business for 15 years, and so doing both of those things, I was the coach, I was the pastor, and so I was pouring into people, but I didn't have those communities where people were pouring into me. And it was so draining, and it became very, very detrimental. And so that was why towards the tail end of that season of life, 2019, 2020, when I started reaching out, I'm like, look, I need to find a group of people that I can get involved with. Like I need people that are smarter than me, more successful than me, that can pour into me, because I just can't keep pouring out. Like it's too draining.
Well, I know there's gonna be only a lot of good things for you to come, and I know there's still a lot of good work for you to do, and there's always someone who needs help. So I'm glad that you're always going to be there to help someone. So as we kind of wrap up, what is something that you'd want to speak to somebody today?
And I tell everybody, like, you have an incredible, incredible opportunity to live a life that you haven't even begun to dream about. Like there are some big dreamers out there. And I would say that what God has for you is even bigger than what you've dreamed of, but it's going to require you to submit to Him. And that is something that I am very, very heavily focused on myself right now, is relinquishing all the control in my life over to God, listening to Him and being obedient as He is calling me to take the next step. And so that's what I would encourage, people that are listening is, man, give it all over to the Lord. If you don't know what that means, go find somebody that does and help them walk through that with you. It will be the greatest gift that you give to yourself, is having that security in who God has created you to be.
Well said. Begin finding faith today. Begin exploring your life today, especially as a man who's trying to do better and live better. And so you're going to have to check out Ryan. All his social medias is going to be in the comments below. His book will be in the comments below so that we can go support him financially. And, see if you're going to be a good fit for the Men of Greatness community. Go check it out. Go ask him. I'm sure he'd be more than willing to have a conversation with you. And if you want to be coached, I don't know if he has any ability, but hey, that way you can go ask him. Again, all that information is going to be below his website and everything that he has. And then if you're also a guy who needs some help, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast so that we can be helping men. And we have the Men's Lifeline Academy Discord group that meets Monday nights, 7:30 p.m. EST, so that way we can help you reach your goals and desires. All right. Thank you, Ryan, for coming on the podcast, my brother.
Thanks, Zach.